think we've wrongly labeled things that we're not good at yet with weakness.
Mm.
And this has been confusing a lot of people because people are like, oh, that's not something I'm good at. So I'm not even going to try to lean into that. Rather
Yeah.
than things like, hey, we didn't do that when we were first riding a bike. We didn't like, well, didn't get the first time. Guess I'll stop now. Like we continued, we worked at it. And that's the thing, the piece that can help people to lean into this.
Hello, hello, Brave Table fam. I have a question for you. How do you respectfully disagree with somebody and maybe even have a difficult conversation without ghosting them, shutting them off, or making them feel small? Has that ever happened to you? Well, welcome to the Brave Table. I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis to be all things just a little bit more brave in your actions, in your relationships, and in your life. And today, my guest has devoted his life to how to respectfully disagree in the workplace, as well as within your most intimate relationships and have difficult conversations in a divided world. He's actually written a book about this. He is none other than Justin Jones-Fosu. He's a highly sought after speaker, TEDx speaker, author, and social entrepreneur known for his dynamic approach to leadership, purpose, and diversity. He's the CEO and founder of Work Meaningful. I love that. An organization committed to helping leaders and teams make work more meaningful and impactful. He is also the author of a few books, including his most recent, I Respectfully Disagree: How to Have Difficult Conversations in a Divided World. So, in this episode, we are diving in how to have brave conversations or difficult conversations with immediate relationships without the conflict. And not only that, how to have meaningful connections with people despite the fact that we may not agree or get along. So without further ado, let's bring on Justin Jones-Fosu to the Brave Table. Hello, Justin.
Hey, I want to start off by being brave and saying that I respectfully disagree with the queen of soul herself, with Aretha Franklin. Because in her song, RESPECT, find out what it means to me, she said, how much respect do we need? Just a little bit. And I want to say that's wrong. In our society today, in our world, we need a lot of it.
It's so good that you are bringing up one of the Queen OGs because I didn't realize that she says just a little bit. I didn't realize
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that you're wearing a hat. If you all are watching this on YouTube, I think you're going to get a kick out of both of our hat game for today. Tell us a little bit about how Justin became Justin and started talking about respectfully disagreeing.
So I like long walks on the beach, and I'm joking, but even though I do, but really long walks in the mountain. Uh, but really, this started from my mom. So I get it from my mama. And one of the interesting things from my mom was I remember we grew up and we didn't have a lot of money. You know, we had a stint of being unhoused early on. My parents divorced. And I remember my mom used to go to Salvation Army to get our clothes before it became cool. And she would get like little sweater vests and bow ties because I swear she was trying to create a boys to men group. But even through all the challenges, is that my mom still made sure that we experienced difference. So we were at Oktoberfest, we were at Polish festivals, Hispanic Heritage Month events, First People's powwows, and a host of other things. Babysitter was Indian, and so like all of these things were really cool. But we didn't just go out to experience difference; we also brought in our home. And my mom would take, we had exchange students from France and Japan and Germany and from Brazil. And I remember my mom would take us to events that we even disagreed with. Like I was there sitting like, Mom, why are we even here? We don't even agree with this. But what she was doing, she was planting these amazing seeds of valuing the humanity of people, even those that we disagreed with. And so those seeds began to germinate as I've gotten older. I didn't necessarily recognize what she was doing. And as I interviewed her for my last two books, I was like, Mom, like, where did this come from for you? And my mom shared a powerful story with me that I want to share with you. My mom was one of the first Black female air traffic controllers in the Air Force. And
No
she shared there was
way.
which is cool, right? She said that sometimes she'd be stationed in Japan for 2 years. And there were some soldiers in that same 2 year time frame that never left base.
Mm.
She was like, Justin, I don't want you and your brother to be like that. To never leave your metaphorical home base and not get to experience the beauty of people and cultures around you. And so that's ultimately kind of the catalyst, the foundation. It's my mom who considered herself a child of the universe. And that's what's germinated in who I am today and how I show up today.
Wow. I mean, well, I love how it's come full circle and shout out because I think you could also be, part of my very favorite band growing up, Boys to Men as well. So she taught you well. Uh, I love it.
No
I'm
time
now,
Philly's back again.
yes, let's go. But I wanted to really kind of, dive into what is the secret sauce? What's the secret sauce that we are missing in having brave conversations or these difficult conversations? And how do we respectfully disagree? You've written a book about it. And I think that there is a rise with young people with social media that we're silently quitting. We're not able to even get on a face to face conversation. We are texting and fighting over text, or we're
Yeah.
ghosting completely and not having to have a face to face conversation. I feel like we're losing the art of having difficult conversations. Would you agree?
Oh, 100% agree. It was challenging in the first place, but the mediums which we have now used and are using are actually hurting us even more. It's funny you bring this up because I've actually been recently reading Cal Newport's book, Digital Minimalism, and it talks through the challenges of you know, it's creating this falsehood that we're creating strong connections with people. And we're absolutely, because we think we're really connected to a whole bunch of people, we're connecting wide versus deep. And I think where bravery happens is in those deep conversations, in those deep connections with people. And so the secret sauce, and there's 5 pillars, but one of the things I realized for us was the secret sauce. And because let's be really clear, Dr. Neeta, it could have been 100 pillars, right? But what we found in our research is that these 5 really rose up. And the last one we added, because it used to be 4, the last one we added is actually the secret sauce. And pillar number 1, you know, the last one we added is challenge your perspective. Because
Mm,
one of the things we realized is in most of the conflict resolution, most of the brave conversation, most of the discussion, it deals with in the moment, right? It deals with you're having it, take 10 deep breaths, take time away, make sure your psychological safety, all these things, which are great things. But we realized there was this heart piece that was missing. And this heart piece, the thing that allows us to be brave, is by choosing to be brave before these conversations even happen.
mm,
It's the challenge of perspective. So, what we mean by that? So, before any disagreement even occurs, what are the practical ways that you're leaving your home base to get to experience the people and cultures around you, especially those that you disagree with? Now, I can't just say that and be like, go and have great conversations. No, let me give you a practical strategy and formula to get there. For leaders, we encourage them to move from a place of an open door policy, which implies passivity, right? It's like, hey, if I'm here, I'm here if you need me. We even created virtual open door office hours. And well, I'll be on Microsoft Teams, which is every Thursday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we've done all this, but it implies if you need me, come to me. Versus challenging leaders to adopt what we call an out the door policy,
mm,
where you choose to leave your office virtually or in person to go and hear the stories of people, especially those that you disagree with. And so let me give you the framework for this. It's called the Circles of Grace Challenge. Circles of
mm,
Grace Challenge is simply this. Every 6 to 12 months, I go to events, experiences, or I engage with people in either which I don't know a lot about and or I disagree with. And I go asking
mm,
2 questions. What did I learn about these events, experiences, and their people? And what did I learn about myself as I experienced them? That's the secret sauce, is by building up those bravery muscles, by hearing disagreements before they even occur, just simply to learn. That's the secret sauce.
mm. Yeah, and it seems like oftentimes y what you're alluding to is oftentimes we're so kind of fixated on our need to be right or our way is the right way or we're kind of the know-it-all and the
And
other. is not. Like they don't know anything, or our perspective is different, better, wiser, whatever. And so there is this kind of sense of like othering the other person. And we've seen this with, I mean, take any big issue, right? From elections that obviously happened. And so, and or when you go back home to the holidays to see your family members and you're going to be arguing, or which is why a lot of people don't, they choose not to go back home to visit the
Yeah.
family dynamics that there once was, because they know they're probably going to bring up things that were super, triggering and conflict creating. And so then they avoid them at all costs. So
Yeah.
now I want to ask you, though, how do we know how to really do this in the workplace. And I love this idea of, what did you call it? The circles of grace?
Circles of Grace challenge. Yeah.
I love that. Is this also applicable to our family members, where you have like years and years and years and decades of layering, and we probably don't want to go back home sometimes and get back into that soup and that mix? And what would you offer to people who's navigating that?
Yeah. I think that, I'll tell it to you in story form because I think that would be more effective. So for me, I grew up without my dad. So my parents divorced at 4 years old, and um, I saw my dad every other weekend initially, and then it became one weekend a month, and then sometimes 2 or 3 years where I didn't see and or hear from my dad for a myriad of reasons with conflict with my parents. And so when I was younger, I didn't bother because I wanted to go skating, go skating with the girls, learn how to skate backwards. I was in the arcade room practicing all that kind of stuff. And I remember when I got older, I would just pull over to the side of the road and just start weeping because I
Mm,
felt like I lost something, like I didn't get something. And what I'm not saying, to be very clear, is that because people grew up with both parents or both guardians in their house, they lived a perfect life. I'm not saying that because I've heard those horror stories. But for me, I felt like I lost something. And so in 2019, I was going to go confront my dad. So my dad's from Ghana. So I was going to go back to visit in Ghana. I'd been there before. And I was going to go confront him Will Smith style. Now, for your listeners, I'm not talking about the Chris Rock version, but I'm talking about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air version,
mhm,
where when his dad came back into his life. And well, if you've never seen an episode, go check it out on YouTube. It's one of those episodes that gives me goosebumps every time and actually leads to tears often. But his dad comes into life, really excited. Will's like awesome because he hadn't spent a lot of time with his dad, and his dad leaves, doesn't tell Will he's leaving, tells Uncle Phil, tell him, I'll see him next time. And then Will's like, yo, it's cool. I'm gonna get married without him, have kids without him. And then what most people have no idea was an unscripted moment. He falls into Uncle Phil's arms, and he's like, "Why did you love me?"
mhm,
And that's what I was gonna go do with my dad. So why did you love me? Why did you fight for me? But because I have a really good therapist, and so I encourage people get therapy, y'all. It's not because there's something wrong with you. I go to therapy because I want to keep things going right, even though my kids may think there's something wrong with me. But not only because they're really good therapists, but also my leadership Charlotte cohort that they challenged perspective
mm,
to, instead of going to confront my dad, to going and hearing his story.
mm,
And one of my participants in one of my audiences, she came up and she said it more eloquently than I ever could. She's like, Justin, they helped you turn a confrontation into a conversation.
mm,
That's bravery. And so I went and I heard his story. And as I listened and I was like, Dad, I realized I've never heard your story before. I'd love just to hear how you grew up, what your story was. All that, as I heard his story, I better understood how he got there. And I asked more questions. And I even had the challenging things like, oh, what happened with you and my mom? And I, right? And so I'm leaning into all of this. And then I found the common ground, not middle ground. Middle ground implies, there's a 50-50. And that's why I challenge people, stop using middle ground, right? Just often not
mhm,
50-50. But I found like how we got there. I was like, man, right? As I heard more and more, I was like, I better understood. And I still communicated my truth. Right? I still leaned in. It's like, hey, are you open to me sharing how I felt growing up? And it allowed me to agree to respect him. And so I chose to forgive him, not because he asked me to, but because I leaned into a brave conversation because I had some really cool people that challenged my perspective. And so I tell people, like, this is something that what I didn't realize on the other side of that forgiveness was a whole aspect of my heritage that I had been holding back and didn't even realize I was doing it. Because he represented the Ghanaian side of me. He's from Ghana. My mom's from America. That makes me African American. Your listeners will get that joke next time. But the interesting is that, like, I leaned into this heritage, just washed over, and it led to me, my clothing style and change, and how I lean into the company and starting a foundation and building schools and doing educational projects in Ghana. But it stemmed from that one grave conversation, and that was the 5 pillars. I challenged my perspective with my leadership Charlotte cohort and my therapist, because I wanted to go tell him, like, this is how you made me feel. But I challenged. Number 2, I became the student. And I listened. Hey, what's your story? The new winning, and this is what I want to hear people to get. What if instead of winning debates, what if our new winning was learning? What if we went into these conversations, our brave space is learning something new about them, even about ourselves and how we're receiving it. Cultivate curiosity. Pill number 3, I asked more questions. Instead of filling in gaps with conclusions, because I knew, I filled in the gaps with more curiosity. Pill number 4, seek the gray. That's how I tried to figure out where's the shades of gray in this black and white that I wanted to create so badly. And then pill number 5 is agree to respect. I chose to respect him, not because he asked me to, but because it was my choice, my prerogative to say my forgiveness.
Wow. Wow. I mean, there's so many things that I want to just kind of circle back on and double click on, because you shared just the confrontation to conversation.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is so powerful, because when we feel like we've been slighted, when we feel like we've been gaslit, when we feel like we've been made small or
Yeah.
diminished our light in some way, we want to confront. And I feel like a lot of times our ego just wants to, like, come up and fight or defend ourselves. Our nervous system gets dysregulated, and we're ready to, like, guards are up, and we're just ready to go. And what I'm hearing you say is, turn this confrontation into a conversation. And there's so much of this in your story of what you shared, where, wow, just anybody putting themselves in your shoes with your dad. I mean, there's so many emotions, so many feelings, rightfully so. And even though, you say it could be so hard, but to find that common ground, and you chose common ground over middle ground. I mean, it's so juicy and so good. And okay, so then why do we not do this?
Yeah.
Why do things get elevated and escalated? And some people are probably like, wow, I would so wish for that for myself. I don't know if I have the patience, or I don't know if I have the heart to forgive. Justin, how could you even do that? How is that even possible?
So it's definitely possible. I've not just my story. I've heard many stories. One of my favorite books, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, who talks about there is a gap in between stimulus and response. And that was a transformative book for me in reading and really absorbing the book, because I was just like, he talked about the power of choice, and that in all of these things, it's a power of choice. And so what I encourage people to do, right, whether it's with a family member or somebody that believes differently or votes differently, maybe you start this off, not necessarily in the place of what we call in our ideological continuum, a place where you have a high commitment, right? Where somebody mentions this topic or this thing, or you have a very sensitive relationship. Don't start there. Start to a place where you might have a low to medium commitment to this ideological divide. And so it may be somebody you might be estranged with, but it may not be as big issue with somebody who you completely cut off from a family member because of things that have happened in the past. So number one is where we start matters. And so we call this principle the Tortoise Principle. And the Tortoise Principle for us it comes from one of my favorite fables growing up, right? The tortoise and hare. For those who don't know it, this hare and this rabbit and turtle are getting ready to race. Rabbit's like, I'm faster. Of course I'm faster. And like, dash it off, right? And the tortoise is just starts flying along, and rabbit's like, oh, I'm killing this tortoise. So goes, takes a rest in the little bushes, and then wakes up and realizes the tortoise is getting ready to cross the finish line. And rabbit tries to immediately run, like, oh. And the moral of the story, right, is, we've called the tortoise growing up, which I wrongly think we've called the tortoise is. We called the tortoise growing up slow. Tortoise was not slow, y'all. The tortoise was strategic and consistent. And so when we take the approach of that, this is going to be a consistency. This is why I developed systems like the Circles of Grace Challenge to develop levels of consistency that we would continue to move forward. That's how we begin to do this. So the more and more we do it, the first time it's gonna be hard. You're gonna go into a situation listening, like, wait a minute, you want to jump in, right? Like, I need to tell y'all why y'all are wrong. That's one of the reasons we don't do it, because one, it starts off hard. But I want to remind something. This is in the world of strengths-based stuff. Let me challenge this, right? Because I believe in all this stuff, former HR practitioner, and all this kind of stuff. I love strengths-based. I believe in it. But I think we've wrongly labeled things that we're not good at yet with weakness. And this has been confusing a lot of people, because people are like, oh, that's not something I'm good at, so I'm not even going to try to lean into that. Rather than things like, hey, we didn't do that when we were first riding a bike. We didn't like, well, didn't get the first time, just have stopped now. Like, we continued, we worked at it, and that's the thing, the piece that can help people to lean into this. But it's also acknowledging what the psychology of this, right? There's really two interesting terms of not only naive realism, that you just assume that you look at the world objectively. And that if everybody had the same set of facts that you did, that they would come to the exact same conclusions. And that's false. Because we see this over and over again about different facts. You can look at a picture, we can see it very different. But also this term called illusion of asymmetric insight. And the psychology behind this is that I think I can really understand you, but I'm just complex. You can't really understand me, right? It's easy to understand you. I get it, right? I get why you like dogs, but me, a cat lover, you just don't understand me. By the way, I love dogs. So these are the things that make it very challenging for us, is going into these conversations, one, thinking that we have to get it right the first time, and realizing we're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. I disrespectfully disagreed with someone on my writing retreat of I respectfully disagree. So we're going to mess up. Number two is that the psychology is working at us, and that's why moving forward is helpful.
Well, and I wanted to just kind of, interrupt you for a second, because, you've shared this whole idea of, you called it asymmetric insight.
Yes, the illusion of asymmetric insight. Yeah.
The illusion of asymmetric insight, because I've heard that recently of, well, I'm such a complex person. And, and do you think that word or that terminology, we're all complex human beings. I mean,
that's the point.
We're all complex human beings, but we can have a conversation. And when, one of my students shared this, and she thought that she couldn't, coach another person because, she said, well, I'm a complex human being. And so I'm just thinking, I'm like, what? It's complex. So for people, and I almost think that that's even weaponized in having a difficult conversation or a brave conversation. Why is that weaponized? Does that make it, where then the person who is using that as a weapon, it just frees them from all responsibility or maybe others themselves. So, all right, I'm othering myself, so I don't need to have this conversation because you'll never understand me anyway. I'm so complex.
Yes. Oh, 100%. I've seen this happen so many times, whether in person, online, where people create this thing where it's almost a force field that you can never penetrate. And I've had to tell people, like, hey, if you ever want to have a meaningful conversation about this, direct message me, but I'm going to block you from this post. Because for me, it's about meaningful conversation, and boundaries are part of this. This is why, like, part of the bravery, sometimes bravery with ourselves, right? Because there's some people who are like, delete, block, quit, all this stuff, and they'll do it immediately. And there's some people who will hold on to relationships, conversations, things online for far too long. And that requires bravery as well. But one of the things we talk about is this difference between boundaries and barriers, which look alike when first started. But boundaries leave a bridge open for somebody to be able to get back, where barriers cut it off completely and no one could ever get back. And so why do we do this? Part of it is because one of our human nature. I think one thing that social media has allowed us to do is to not go deep into these meaningful connections, not develop a sense of empathy. Proximity breeds empathy. And so I am consistently able to, I talk with my friends, right, about dating apps. I've never been on one, but they, I hear their stories and they be like, well, I swipe left or swipe. I don't know which way you swipe. So I just don't judge me. But whatever way you swipe, right, it can be very easy to like block you and to stop talking to you. I started noticing that in real life. So when I got divorced, and I started dating, I still didn't use the dating apps. I was like, why did I just get blocked? Why did I just get ghosted? Like, why didn't I? Like, what just happened? And it just felt that people were like, I'm just too complex to have a conversation. I don't want to share my thoughts because you just aren't going to understand. And I'm just like, no, like, just tell me, like, hey, we're not a good match, we're a good fit, and I'll move on. You don't have to block me or ghost me. You can just tell me that. Fortunately, my current wife decided not to didn't block me or ghost me. So, so I'll say all that to say is if we choose, so it come down to consistently hear people's stories, to ask them their stories, to say, like, wow, I was at the gym the other day, and I give you a great body language moment. This guy that I see often, saw for 3 years, know him, talk to him. I don't know him for real, but like I've seen him in the gym, right? And it's one of the places you can know people and not know their names ever. And I was talking. He's like, "Oh, how you doing?" I was like, "Well, last weekend really sucked. Cried on the plane and da da da. But I had some travel, and this week's been good." And he just sat down. He's like, "What do you do?" Now, that small moment of sitting down communicated to me that he actually wanted to have a meaningful connection. So I encourage people, if you find yourself in that place where you might feel like you're complex or you might be on the receiving end of somebody saying that, choose the body language, a posture, or sit down, tell me more, engage in the power of three, where you listen to the third level of conversation, whatever the thing that you may choose to communicate, one, that you're ready and willing to hear someone else's story.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because in today's world, everything is so fast, and it's kind of, especially with how things are with social media, it's all about me, 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 me. And we've grown into this like narcissistic culture of, all right, it's just all about me and what's going on, and my problems are worse or bigger or whatever than yours. Yet if we're, I think that whole old adage of seek to understand, then be understood. And I think that you're so right about, I wanted to kind of even circle back on the boundaries and barriers, because it's so great that we can have our boundaries, and it's so great to be boundaried. And especially for people coming from immigrant cultures where, we're just trying to open up for the sake of getting validation and acceptance and belonging. And so then we put up our boundaries to protect our energetic space. But then also, the barriers that you call it, right? Where the barriers are just like, nope, this is my guard up and it's non-penetrable, and you can't get to know who I am. I won't let you get to know who I am. Even if you try, and because either you posted something or you said something or they made a meaning of how you were in the past or before, And
Yeah.
we've got to realize that everyone is evolving, and hopefully people are
Yeah.
evolving. And that's the beauty, right? Hopefully you are not the same as you were yesterday. Hopefully you are
Yeah.
not the same as you were a year ago or 2 or 3 or 4. And this goes back to your, the circle of grace,
Yeah.
um, where it's like, can we have more grace within ourselves? And then for other people as well. And that's, I think, really big, because that kind of what you're talking about, this opening up to even be the recipient of this window where somebody can
Yeah.
actually get to know you energetically. You've got to be open to receive it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has to be the time, right? Because there's, some people say, well, I can't listen to everybody's stories. And we're like, yes, no, you cannot, right? Like if I stopped at the gym, which sometimes people can, think I do, and talk to everybody, I'd never work out, right? And I'd never have the muscles I have. However, one of the things that's important, and I give you another strategic framework to lead into this, right? It's one of the things we created called 1 MC/W. And 1 MC/W simply stands for one meaningful connection per week. What if you built into your calendar 15 to 20 minutes to actually have a meaningful conversation? And then I love the adage the whole adage you gave, and we put a little different spin on it. Our challenge is to challenge people to seek to be more interested than interesting.
Mhm.
And when you're more interested in others and you lean in and like, hey, what brought you to our community? What brought you to our neighborhood? Even family members that I've had questions, cousins that, had molested me when I was growing up, that I sat down and I was like, hey, like, we have never talked about this before, but like, you remember, like what happened? I mean, what was the story? What was happening? And walking through that stuff. Those are
Mhm.
opportunities to dive in deeper. And if you're like, Justin, that's way too much. That's 52.14 times a year in a leap year. Well, then flip the W upside down and make it one meaningful connection per month. And maybe it's one lunch meeting that you schedule, and choosing to intentionally also engage people that you normally wouldn't engage, or people that are outside of your comfort zone, or people that are outside of your community, or people that believe or vote differently, in order to grow and learn. If the new winning was learning, I think each of us would operate in a different position and place. And so that's one way, to your point of your brilliance, that I think we can really lean in and get out of our own little bubbles to be able to hear each other.
Yeah. Well, and I love your book so much, because I think that it gives people such a beautiful framework on, the difficult conversations that we really need to have, because we are
Yeah.
more divided than ever. And being able to brave these kinds of conversations, but also brave people that you wouldn't normally hang out with, you wouldn't normally,
Yeah.
pay attention to, or and to kind of widen even, your tolerance of other people, because I think it allows us to, again, like you were sharing, change perspective. So what is it that, you hope people could get out of this book with their friends, family, colleagues? And, what is the mission for the book?
So two things. One thing, and if you would allow me to give some gray to your statement about tolerating people more, I don't want people to tolerate anyone. And one of the things we've been making this distinction, we have this statement, is that I can vehemently disagree with someone's ideology and still passionately pursue your humanity. That's not tolerating people. You might tolerate the ideology, but it's passionately pursuing the humanity. So to sum it up in one of the statements we make, because everybody's just like, you just need to be more open-minded. No, open-minded. And I was like, no, open-minded is not the answer to all of this, because there are things that you and I are closed-minded, aren't there? Right. But even when we are closed-minded, we should never stop being open-hearted. And that distinction is one of the things that I'm challenging people in this book, is that I can respect you and still disagree with you. That I can honor who you are as a human being and vehemently deny what your ideology may be. And that distinction is one of the things where we've tightly coupled the individual with the ideology. And I want to challenge us to begin to uncouple that so that we can value the humanity of individuals, period, which leads to the second thing. And because a lot of people are like, well, Justin, what if they believe this? Why do I have to, agree to respect them, which is pillar 5, right? I was like, well, you don't have to do anything. I'm just giving you some encouragement of ways to have better relationships. But when we agree to respect, I'll tell you in a quick story. One of my former colleagues was a former skinhead, very harmful views, racist, misogynist, all this kind of views. And I was very curious about how he got in, how he got out. And as he shared his story, he said, we loved when people used to call us these names. When they would yell at us and call us racist and misogynist, like we loved it. It was fuel for us. He said the seeds of change, the catalyst moments that were part of his turning and getting out were the very same people that he disrespected to meet that still chose to respect him. He got to a place where he just couldn't compute. He was like, I couldn't continue asking, why am I disrespecting these types of people who are choosing to still respect me? So I'll sum it all up and say, what if our brave moment, our brave conversation that's even when people disrespect us, that we are seed planters of respect for them, not knowing when it might germinate. That's the power we have. And if you're like, Justin, that's just one example. I'm glad you challenged me. There's a great New York Times article that showed one guy named Daryl that ended up, he befriended a black musician, black jazz musician, blues, befriended Ku Klux Klan members. Not when they were getting out, but while they were in. And through his friendship, his agreeing to respect, over 200 of them turned in their robes. What if our power is in planting seeds of respect and valuing the people that we are in front of, online with, and even at home with?
Wow. I mean, there's so much juice in that. And even in, what you shared about you can be close-minded, but can you be open-hearted and prioritizing and valuing humanity? And I think that's really, what this human experience is all about. And you have obviously so much wisdom, so much research, so many frameworks. You are such a bright light. I can see why you are one of the most notable speakers in any organization. And where can everyone get your book and even just learn more from you? Because you are such a bright, shining light. And I feel like you can illuminate more of what we need so badly.
Thank you for that. I'd like to take this recording and send it to my wife. Tanya, if you're listening, she just called me a bright light. So I expect to hear that every night. No. But I love connecting with people on LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite places just to be able to. I'm Justin Jones-Fosu on LinkedIn. But then, from the website perspective, how to respectfully disagree.com is a place that we're constantly updating things. Like our respectful disagreement quiz is coming out. And so I'm excited about that so people can see where they are as it relates to respect and disrespect on the continuum. And then workmeaningful.com is our overarching website where we're at the intersection of meaningful work and inclusion. And so that's the way, I'm just for me, I'm just a regular guy who's just trying to make a big impact.
So good. So good. We have a spill the chai section and before we let you go, and you can answer these as short as you want, as long as you want. You ready?
Let's go. Let's spill the chai.
What are you currently braving?
I am braving how to treat my team members like family when I recently had to let a few of them go. Yeah, one of our values is treat them like family, but it no longer made business sense. And we had been unbraving conversations for a while. And our CFO challenged us in many ways, and we had to figure out, how do I lean into letting these people go who we consider family members and part of our work meaningful team, um, but doing it in a way that honors them and values them. And so hopefully we found the right mix. Recently had to do that, but it's a lot of tears, a lot of sad moments. One of our former teamers' birthday was today, and I called him and wished him happy birthday and sang for him. But that was a brave conversation that needed to be had, and I was dreading it, but it was necessary, and hopefully it was one that was done well.
Wow, that's big. From our That Sucked, Now What conversation card deck, what is something not many people know about you?
And before, I used to be that I was physically abused by my older brother, but I talk about that in the book now. So, so I think a lot more people know about that. What's another thing that people don't know about me? Oh, we'll have a good one. So I have what I used to call 2 failed books, that I'll now call 2 learning opportunities. Um, Before this 3 that I talk about. One was inspirational book of poetry, because everybody's like, Justin, you have to have a book. You have to have a book. I'm like, I don't know what to write about. I'll write about poetry. I love poetry. So that book came out. It was a good book, but it was very self-published. And then the book after that, which I still think is a great concept, it's called Finding Your Glasses. Don't look that book up, please, because it's bad. Um, and the whole thing was about revealing and achieving authentic success, and that when you put on somebody else's glasses, you end up going blind. And so you have to find your own prescription on life. And so the concept was great. However, the writing of the book was horrible. The ego in the book, I was like, oh, if you scored perfect, you're just like me. You should be on the stage, right? And I was like, yeah, no, I'm still figuring this stuff out. And intersections, don't ever have your friend, even if they're an English PhD, to edit your book. Have a editor edit your book. And I learned that lesson because there are sections where
That is true.
it repeated itself another time. And I sold like thousands of copies and didn't realize it. And so these last 3 books were very professionally edited, which is great. Editors are Dave Ramsey and John Acuff for the last 2. And this last one, a great publisher that does like the Arbinger Institute and Ken Blanchard and all that kind of stuff. And so they handled all that stuff, which is great. But most people don't know that I've actually written 5 books because I only talk about 3.
There you go. I feel like you have so many more books in you. One word that describes this season of life.
Meaningful.
Thank you, Justin, for this incredibly meaningful, fun, and impactful conversation. I feel like you're just a breath of fresh air, and I'm so glad that this is your mission, to help people have more difficult conversations.
Thank you, Dr. Neeta. I have one question for you. What is one word describes this past weekend?
Full. We're keeping it real on the Brave Table. Thank you so much. I'm so excited for your book. Everyone, get the book, and you can connect with him at I Work Meaningful and workmeaningful.com, as well as his book, I Respectfully Disagree: How to Have Difficult Conversations in a Divided World. And always, if this episode resonated with you in any way, please go ahead. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps us grow the show more than you know. And also go ahead and tag us at The Brave Table or at Neeta Bhushan on Instagram. If this episode changed your perspective, maybe helped you in some way understand more about yourself, helped you in a way to be maybe a little bit more brave in your work setting, in your home setting, in your relationship setting, let us know, and I will see you soon. Don't forget to be just a little bit more brave. You know I've got so much more in store for you, so if you are really ready to dive in and keep owning your emotions like the boss that you are, click right here. Go ahead, don't be shy. I'll see you in the next one. Keep shining.